Um, and once again, I think what we're talking about here really is, I know for myself, the really strong posts, the ones that I think I feel like it's obvious the next day when it publishes that my readers are really, digging into it and something maybe they'll come back to later. A lot of times those are the posts that take the most out of me. A lot of times those are the posts that are the most draining. So in a sense, it's kind of like, how do you gain readers? It's hard work, and I think that if you aren't willing to put in that hard work, you're gonna probably have a lot of fluff, a little bit of good content, and you're not gonna have as strong a readership. So I think that's pretty much, but it's great advice, but at the same time, it's almost like it's common sense, but it's not. So, all right.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's definitely hard to put it to practice, and for me, it's been an experiment, and I've constantly I kind of found a little bit of a groove now, so I kind of have a feeling of what my readers like. But in the beginning, I was doing different kinds of posts, sometimes ranting. I think one time I attacked David Allen for having a too complicated a GTD setup.
Oh yeah.
This is back in 2007, and a lot of readers didn't like that. Well, it was kind of intentionally controversial. It's still there if you want to search for it. But yeah, I tried to be a little bit edgy, and it turned out that's not what my readers like.
Yeah.
So that was the last one of those I did. But it was fun. You just kind of experiment and find what works for you. So yeah, just have fun doing it too.
Yeah.
That's the important thing. It's hard work, but it's a lot of fun.
Exactly. All right. So Space Age Sage of spaceagesage.com asks, what is the blogging advice you find yourself giving out the most to bloggers?
Well, basically what I've been telling you now is just the high impact posts. I mean, I might sound like a broken record because I talk about it on my other blog for writers and bloggers, writetodone.com.
Right.
And yeah, so a lot of my advice is really focused on doing that, and I guess like you said, it's not that easy to do, even though I tell you do these high impact posts, make them really useful, pack them with tips. I mean, again, it's an experiment, and you kind of figure out how to best do that. So a lot of my advice is focused on how to do those high impact posts. But yeah, I mean,
so you would say
basically
one of
that's the only thing that's really worked for me, is just writing those really useful posts, and so I talk about it all the time.
Right, and so, but you would say that probably one of the questions that you end up answering the most, or therefore asked by bloggers the most, is probably, how do you gain the most readers? How do you get, and you end up basically answering high impact posts. Is that pretty?
Well, a couple other things that I don't talk about a lot, just to kind of flip the question on its head, because I have talked about this high impact post, throughout this whole interview so far. So I want to kind of get into some other things. One is SEO stuff. I mean, a lot of bloggers, when they first start reading about SEO and how to optimize it for Google and everybody else. I don't do that stuff, and not that there's no value in it, but again, I look at what has the most value for the time that I spend blogging, and I could be optimizing my pages and my content and my headlines for SEO type stuff, but I found, if you're worrying about that stuff, especially early on, you're putting your focus in the wrong place. You really got to focus on that high impact, useful content.
Right.
And when you do that, people are going to link to you because they like that stuff. They'll bookmark you in Delicious, and you'll get a lot of traffic there.
Right.
And so that really, for me, I mean, I have a lot of traffic from Google, but I've never done SEO stuff. And so the reason, I mean, the way you get traffic from Google is people linking to you.
Right.
And so you can SEO your whole site as much as you want to, but if no one links to you,
right.
You got no Google juice. So
right.
you gotta really produce that content that people want to link to.
Yeah.
If you want, I mean, it's more important than SEO.
Yeah.
Another thing that I don't necessarily talk about as much is, like say, blog design. Although I think it is really important, and I think one thing that people do a lot is they fill their blog with ads, even before they get a lot of readership. They want to start making money from day one, and so they put the Google ads on there, and maybe bunch of other networks, and there's no use having ads if you don't have readers.
Right.
I mean, you won't make any money just having a bunch of ads on there. And one thing that it does is when people go to a site that's filled with ads, they kind of they don't like the experience of being on your site as much because it's too cluttered.
Exactly.
And so that's something that I've been trying to find is a balance of between too much clutter and trying to make some money off the site.
Right.
So.
Well, and I was gonna say, the way I've always looked at it is, as long as your site design does not get in the way of your content, then it's okay. Like, yes, it's great if your blog looks great. It's great if when people come to your blog, it's not a bad thing if they look around and they're like, wow, this is a really good looking blog. But in the end, if you've got quality content, as long as your design doesn't get in the way of them enjoying that, then that's the important thing. Then it's kind of like then it's just icing on the cake if you can even tweak it and make it look better. But I agree that you don't want to walk into a coffee shop, sit down, and have magazines like all over the place and trashed, and you wouldn't want to come back. A nice, clean design, and that's one thing. Once again, Zen Habits has always had a clean design. So, it's a real quick side note. I have noticed. I haven't noticed your ads in a while, and it's just because they've been the same for a while. People leave them, say for a couple weeks, a month, and I think recently you might have changed them around or something, and all of a sudden I started clicking on your ads, and I'm like, why am I clicking on the ads at Zen Habits when I haven't clicked them in a while? And I realized it's just because you had changed them around, and it was kind of a reminder of how important it is to kind of, when you do have ads, to move them around, to keep them look, different and stuff, because otherwise they just eventually blend in. You kind of phase it out.
That's interesting. I just actually changed them around yesterday. So is that when you?
Actually,
you
well,
noticed this since yesterday?
I think it was actually a couple days ago, so maybe it was that I hadn't really noticed. Maybe they'd been the same for a couple weeks. I don't know. Maybe it was just that over the holidays I hadn't really popped over, very much, and so maybe it had been a while or something. But I just remember definitely they were changed around. Some of the designs were a little different, and it just caught my eye. And next thing I know, I was actually clicking into one. I just rarely click into ads. Just as a blogger, you kind of almost, don't do that. And then I'm like, yeah. Anyway, so it was kind of a testament to the importance of doing that.
Well, that's interesting feedback. I don't actually think about my ads that much. I'm always focused on the content, and so I tend to leave them alone and try and put them off in the back of my head. So
right.
Yesterday or recently, I've been trying to take out some of the clutter. I do that every once in a while when I think, oh, that's too cluttered. I don't like too much stuff in my sidebar. Kind of bothers me, and
right.
I think it might bother some readers too who have the same kind of sense of aesthetics as I do.
Yeah.
So every once in a while I'll go through and I'll try and remove as much stuff as possible. And I was redoing that, and it's good to hear that it did have a little bit of good effect.
Absolutely. So. Okay.